Okay, good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to Richford Elementary School. I'm Kelly Dean. If you don't know who I am, I'm the principal. And I'd like to just welcome you to our school presentation and our budget presentation. So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of how our evening is going to look. We're going to start first with a video that our students have put together. We did this, I think it's kind of a testament to the incredible things that our kids can do. So Melanie, one of my staff members, and I literally went to a couple of students last week and said, so we're going to put a video together. And I handed them a piece of paper and I said, kind of look this over and see if you can kind of like memorize some of these words in the next few seconds. And then we're going to do a video of the school. And Carolina was one of them, and she said, now? And I'm, yeah, sure, right now. And so we started. And then we pulled other kids, and they talked about things that are really important to them here. And I think, so you know, and there was some nervousness. We literally pulled them out and said, you know, would you talk? And so they did. And we're talking about preschoolers up through fifth graders. So I think it's a testament to a lot of things. I think this video will show you a good glimpse of who we are as a school in terms of the things that are really important to us outside of the academics, because we talk about academics a lot. There's lots of other things that are also truly important to us that represent us as a school. So we'll show the video. It's about 6 minutes. And then I have some teachers who are also going to talk for a few minutes. They will come up, do the same thing. They'll highlight some of what was in the video, and then a couple of other things that were not, that get to some of our academic and instructional practices. We're going to have dinner after that. Dinner will be, we will be able to gather your dinner from the line on the other side here. And then at the very end of dinner, I have staff that will pick up for you. And Ms. Coda, our superintendent, Lynn Coda, will be presenting the budget portion of the presentation, and our staff will deliver dessert at the same time. So I hope that you really enjoy the evening. I hope that you find it informative. I hope you share the information with your friends and neighbors. I'm very, very proud of this school and our students, and I think that that's going to come through this evening. So thanks for being here.
Hey everybody, welcome to Richford Elementary School. I can't wait to show you around. Yeah, this is our yearly assessment grid, and we have to put the bus every Friday, and this is our yearly scores. Hey, Issa! Can you tell us about our play chart?
If when we get celebrations, we try our hardest to get a whole school celebration.
What's your favorite celebration?
The snow volcano we made up.
Yeah, that was very fun. Hey, Tristan, are you excited for morning meeting?
I'm really excited about morning meeting. Hey Sharon, can you tell us about morning meeting?
Come in, and you can see what we're doing in the morning.
What do you do in morning meeting?
We did a share activity in the meeting. What's your favorite part? Activity.
What do you do in the activity?
What's your favorite activity? My favorite activity is headbangs. What's your favorite activity? stay in the museum.
Ooh. Those are both really fun.
Did you know we have a whole school morning meeting once a month?
Yeah. It is very fun.
It is. We get to sing our whole school song. What's going on in the gym today? Let's check it out. We are doing the Kids Art Challenge. We did it for 3 years so far, 2023, 2024, and 2025. Allie, what are you doing? We are also doing the Kids Art Challenge, and it looks like over there they're doing the monthly taste test, and it looks like they're doing some kind of tropical fruit. Thank you. So we're getting close to the library. Hey, can you tell us about the 3D printer?
Yeah, these are all the things you can make out of the 3D printer, and we also have some really, really cool furniture.
Thank you, Ava. Do you remember when they went on community trips with their classes?
Yeah, I remember.
Oh, what did you do in I went to Our Lady of the Meadows and played fun games with residents. What'd you do?
I go to the farms and then I had residents with a cool hat and go in the trucks.
Did you Was it fun?
Yeah.
I checked books in and out. I put books on the shelves. Like I'm doing it right now. I put books out on the shelves, and like on the side here it says what letters or numbers they are. So I have to make sure I get the right one. If this one, and then I check with whoever it was who came in to put it in a pile over here, and then I keep doing that until I'm done, and then I put these out on the shelves.
I'm so hungry. What's for lunch?
Well, we're having fish sticks, oven fries, and roasted broccoli. Strawberries and blackberries. How's that sound?
Yummy.
Sounds good there. Have a great day.
Thank you. Hey, can you tell us about art?
Yeah, we're currently working on little art things, and here's an example of mine. Yeah, can you hold this up?
This is my app. It's for makeup and skincare. Thank you. Can you tell us yours?
This is my app, and it's only for gamers, people that play games.
Thank you. Oh, wait, I almost forgot the most important part of RES.
I bet I know. I believe it's Leader and Me.
Yes! Hey, Mariah, can you tell us a little about what you're reading?
I'm reading about the books that we read, begin with the end in mind, and be proactive.
What are you learning with Leader and Me?
I'm learning about the emotional bank account. Withdrawals is like when people are being mean to you, they take out your emotions. But with deposit is like when you put your good emotions in.
Thank you, Amara.
You're welcome.
Let's go check the music room. Hey, Nora, can you tell us how your lesson's going?
Yeah, it's going great. I'm practicing for the April concert.
Thank you for sharing. I heard you guys are the plant managers. What do you do?
We go around the school and water plants to keep them healthy.
It's getting close to the end of the day.
Yeah, we still have ASP and basketball.
What's your guys' favorite ASP?
My favorite is thing to do at ASP is go down the sledding hill on Fridays. My favorite is Friday fun day because we get to go to gyms and play different activities.
Hey guys, can you tell us about your favorite thing in basketball?
My favorite thing in basketball is the practices and the games.
Mine is
Probably the games and practices too.
Thank you, guys. Hey, thanks for coming to our school. Have a great day. See you later.
Work hard and do your best.
So I'm going to, a couple of other things I didn't mention. After dinner, a couple of the teachers will be able to take the students into the classroom so that they don't have to sit and listen to the budget part of the presentation. There's papers on the tables that just highlight some of our important work that'll also be referenced by some of the teachers, but those are certainly for you to take home. And the books that were referenced in here are out there. We're now currently on the 2 round tables. Students made those, and those are on the 7 habits. So each one is on a different habit. We're currently about to publish the 3rd one. Not quite sure, it's not here. We were hoping it would be here for tonight, but it's not. So we're doing 1 a month until the end of the school year. And then hopefully at the end of the school year, we'll do something big with that as well. And then over here on the little table is a poster that Carrie Ross put together about our after-school program. So please take a moment to look at that as well. So I'd like to invite up Anna Tracy and Lisa Conger to talk briefly about what we call MTSS. It's our multi-tiered or multi-leveled systems of support for students.
You can click on the link, please.
I have to raise that. Thank
I don't know if it was, well, sorry, I have a loud voice. All right, so here at RES, we have what we call multi-tiered or multi-layers of instruction or support. So basically, you'll see across the bottom, the arrow, this is what's available to all students in all content areas at RES. It kind of might be surprising because, you know, typically a lot of our education, we thought special education, pull out only, intervention, pull out only. But as you can see, if students are receiving something more specific in level 3 in intervention, they're not missing out on their first instruction. They are also receiving first instruction and a double dose of something that's just a little bit more in the same content area. It might just be a smaller group. And then if students are needing a little bit more support with that area, then that's when we come into level 3. But it does not mean that they are only seeing an interventionist necessarily. They're still seeing the classroom teacher for first instruction and double dose, and they're still getting intervention. A lot of this has to do with what we had started about 4 years ago, and we've built our structures and systems and utilized all of our staff in very flexible ways. So as the interventionist, I'm also in the classroom providing first instruction and doing double dose and doing intervention groups, which is a very similar as for you in math. Do you want to speak how that kind of goes in math?
Yeah, and so the same thing happens in math. I'm, in the classroom for the first instruction. We also break into groups, and I am in the classroom as well, working with students on specific things that they are working on in the first instruction. And then if needed, I will work with kids on more targeted intervention.
Do you want to go to the next slide, Courtney, please? So a few years ago, we had a little partnership with Arizona State University about some teaming model, and some of us teachers took a workshop around that. So instead of one classroom, one teacher with 20 students, you can see that, I know it's a little hard to see. Is that on the tables as well? No. So basically, it's at our pre-K, it might be 2 classroom teachers and a para, and they might share the students. And then in kindergarten, there could be 2 classroom teachers with 2 interventionists and maybe with a para and a special educator as well. So all working through all layers of instruction with all of the students. And this model looks very similar in each grade level. It depends on, so we try to put as many certified teachers in each grade level as possible from the beginning. So right now, we have 1 3rd grade teacher, but there are 2 interventionists and 1 literacy certified para and 1 classroom teacher that work together in teaching first instruction. So I deliver a first instruction lesson as the literacy interventionist, but then we also still deliver literacy intervention at our what I need time for that more targeted skill for the close the gap. That is the level 3. So this has come a long ways in elementary, I think in elementary school structure, and what we value here is the teaming. And so that's, I think it's very special and unique, and it's different than the past, and it's something that we keep building and working hard to get better at, and just informing about all the different levels of, I think like Kelly was saying, it's levels of instruction, because whether it's academics or social emotional, math, literacy, students are able to access all of these levels. And then if they are in needing of something different, then that's when the special education referral might come in at level 5.
And we're very fortunate that we get to meet together as a literacy team or a math team every week to really talk about first instruction, what are we going to do in the classroom, look at any data that we might have, what are some things that kids are struggling with, what can we do to help support them. And so it has been a real blessing to be able to get together and really thoughtfully plan out what we're going to do in the classroom each week.
Okay, I'd like to invite up Carolyn Hassan, one of our 4th grade teachers, and Abby Gray, one of our 2nd grade teachers, who are going to talk to you a little bit about Leader in Me.
Good evening. Again, I'm Caroline. I teach 4th grade.
I'm Abby. I teach 2nd grade.
In 2002, RES started working with the Franklin Covey and the Leader in Me programs, establishing the 7 habits and the work that drives us today. Year 0, we like to call it, was when we did a whole staff training, but we didn't roll it out to students just yet. We were, as a staff, we're on a learning journey, going through the habits, the paradigms that are out on your table. Year 1 was last year. We started rolling this out to students. We started doing daily lessons in our classrooms, using the Leader in Me curriculum, again, with our students. And then we are currently in what we would call year 2, and we just happen to be in core 2.
So Core 2 is more structured lessons. We have the expectation to teach a module a week, so students are being exposed to Leader in Me and habits pretty much daily. It's very neat to see how absorbent the students have been overall with this program, even watching them interacting with each other at recess or lunch, any other social times, and how they're using the language and, practicing the habits with one another, just using those skills to identify what's happening in their everyday life. You might even hear some kids at recess with the the Gaga pit, once it's all thawed, of course, of using think win-win and how everybody can be a winner even though you might get out.
So Leader in Me is really working on establishing leadership qualities within our students. Currently, we're working on some academic growth where we believe that, and we know that all students can make a year's worth of growth. Students are taking the ownership on this. They're tracking their learning and their lead measures, so the ways that they're practicing. They're graphing it in their leadership portfolios, whether that is paper or that's online for our upper grades.
So the neat part for me personally about this program, Caroline and I both started teaching in 2020, the midst of COVID. Everybody looked like this. And, you know, talking with our students, they had a very hard time identifying what a goal was and how to even set a goal for themselves that wasn't just teacher picked for them. But now, you know, 5 years later and 3 years into this program, 2 years with students, they're able to identify their own goals and even their own next steps and things important to them. And again, with the chatter and the language between students and saying, hey, this is my goal and it's okay that I wasn't successful, but I know I can do this to get better. Or, hey, I met my goal, I'm gonna reach a little bit higher and I know I can try to do this. So it's really just students and teachers all seeing that everybody can be a leader, everybody has genius, and there are some goals that anybody can work on. If you were here, well, everybody was here for student conferences. That was the binder that your student presented to you.
So not only are students tracking their individual growth, but we as a school are tracking the growth in the classroom and as a whole school. So in that very first video, you saw a student explaining our classroom, our school-wide wildly important goal, which is being graphed out in our lobby. You're more than welcome to go take a look. And then each individual classroom is also tracking their goals, which is everybody has the same goal. It's 100% of students can make growth in reading. So we're all tracking that. We're all working towards a common goal, and there's small celebrations along the way. Nobody is left out of any celebration just because they didn't reach their goal. They still contributed and they are part of this team.
And the idea of this program is to give students life skills. Typically in, you know, the job force nowadays, these are skills that companies are looking for, and it's really neat that we're able to provide this to all students, even to our kindergarteners and all the way up to our fifth graders. The fact that they're able to openly communicate in an honest way of, you know, where they're at and where they want to go, as well as even giving them those leadership roles and those leadership jobs. You know, everybody has a different job, and I think it's really nice that students get to see that between one another with their peers. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to, at this point, I'm going to invite people to get their dinner. Are we all set? Okay. So we have soup, we have salad, and bread, and then at the end, like I said, we'll clean up for you while Ms. Coda does her budget presentation, and we'll serve dessert. And the children will be able to go into the classroom, and we'll have a couple of teachers that will offer that. Okay. It's the old-fashioned, you can come line up at the, you know, like pretend you were in school and go line up. The kids will show you. The kids will show you how it works.
So I was going to introduce myself, but Kelly did that part, so thank you, Kelly. I think I'll start by just telling you a little bit about who I am. So I am actually a Montgomery native. I have lived in this area my entire life. I'm a product of FNESU. I attended Montgomery Elementary School, and I have 4 kids. They've gone through our FNESU schools as well. And now I'm a proud grandmother of a preschooler in FNESU. So I'm very invested here, and it matters a lot to me how our schools do to support our students and prepare them for whatever their future is going to bring. So I thought I would start with a little bit of that so you know who was talking to you tonight. I'm glad to be here. I thank you for coming. I know it's difficult. People don't really love to come out and talk about school budgets, but I appreciate you all coming tonight. I just want to start by acknowledging, usually when I talk about school budgets, my business manager is with me, and he couldn't be with me tonight, so I'm going to just out that makes me a little nervous because he has all the details, of the budget. I definitely have a lot of information about the budget, but I won't be able to pull exact numbers if people are looking for something like that. So Courtney is here with a notebook. If there are questions that I can't answer for you tonight, she's going to capture your name and either your phone number or your email. We'll get your question answered and we'll get the information back out to you. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. I want to start by just saying that our annual report is on your table, and those are actually going to be mailed out to families in the next, not sure, within the next week. You'll get that in your mailbox as well. So this first page, those are a few of the celebrations that we pulled out of our annual report that were specific to the Enosburg-Richford district within our supervisory union. So I won't go through all of it, but we have a lot to celebrate in FNESU for athletic sports championships within the last year. We have several students who have been recognized with some pretty impressive awards in FNESU. We have educators down the side that have also been recognized for their service and the work they're doing in our system, as well as some other celebrations that we hope you'll take a look at. One of the things that you heard a presentation today around the levels, the MTSS levels, and that's all about making sure that we can get students to where they need to get academically in order to be successful. This data is something that we track. I won't go over each piece of it, but I'll just tip you, what we're looking for is growth. This is a fall to winter growth measure, and you have similar data in that annual report to look at. So this first graph represents our literacy data. So when we're looking from the first time a class took it to the next time they took it, we want to see that green line grow, and that means that those kids are at or above proficiency, and we want to see all the other lines start to shrink. So it starts on the left with, it's too small for me to even read on this, first grade, and it goes up through high school level. So this is one of the ways in which we're measuring growth, and we're going to be looking for what that looks like in the spring. And we're seeing lots of places that we could celebrate solid growth. The next slide represents growth from fall to winter in our math data that we take across, and this is not specific to Richford Elementary, this is for the whole supervisory union. I know it's confusing because we talk about Franklin Northeast Supervisory Union. We actually have two districts in Franklin Northeast, and this is one of them. You're merged with the Enosburg schools as well, so it's the Enosburg-Richford district. That's the budget that you're voting on. You don't vote on anything else except that portion of the budget. So between all of the schools that we have in this district, we have two pre-K through 5 elementary schools. We serve 444 students between those schools. We have two 6 through 12 middle high schools, and we serve 659 students between those two. We also are pretty unique across Vermont. We have our own CTE center, Cold Hollow Career Center. A lot of places don't have their own center. The centers in other parts of the state receive students from all over the place, and our students have much better access to those CTE programs than some students in other parts of the state. So that's something that's really unique and special for us. We have this year 135 different students accessing programs at Cold Hollow Career Center. So one of the things to know about budget is the number of students in your school is a very important number. And there is a narrative in our state about declining enrollment. If you're listening to anything that people are talking about at the state level, they're talking about how many fewer students we're serving in Vermont. Although that is true in the statewide data and narrative, it is not actually what's happening here in FNESU. So you can see that every year we have to submit a report, and that's called our October 1st enrollment report. So we have to report out on how many students are in our schools on that particular date. And it's a pretty important date because then that has to do with our funding and what we get from the state to fund our schools. So you can see that this tracks back to 2020, and it actually projects forward all the way to 2029. Morgan, our business manager, I call it his magic math. I don't know how he does it, but he has a calculation to figure out how many students we're expecting in our schools. So you can see that from 2020 until now, we were at 1,051, we're at 1,103. We're expecting by 2029, we'll be up another 36 students in this Enosburg-Richford part of the district. This is just another way to look at enrollment, so you could see over time, this represents the 4 schools. You can see over time how we had a dip over here in 2020 that represented what happened to students that didn't come back to school after COVID. We had a year where we lost a lot of students to homeschool, but we've seen that the numbers go up, and we're projecting in Enosburg High School, Middle High School, and Enosburg Elementary that we will continue to see those numbers go up. We have seen the numbers come down a little at Richford High School and Richford Elementary School, but overall, as a district, our projection is very stable. Not true for areas like the far Northeast Kingdom or the southern part of the state, where they're seeing pretty significant declines in enrollment. So we have a school budget vote that's coming up on March 4th, and on that ballot, you will see several articles. The first article is to elect a moderator. We then have to elect a clerk for the district. I'll just note that the former, sorry, I'm going to get there next. The third article is about the treasurer. So Fran Jackson has been the longtime treasurer for the Enosburg-Richford district, and Fran has been an Enosburg resident for a very long time. She has actually moved out of the Enosburg-Richford district. This, when these local districts merged, the NMV schools voted to appoint the supervisory union treasurer as their district treasurer. So the person does not have to be a resident of the community if it's the supervisory union treasurer. So on the ballot is the same language for the Enosburg-Richford side, is to appoint the supervisory union treasurer to act as this district's treasurer. The fourth article is about electing board members. We have 2 seats open, one for Enosburg, one for Richford. Both of those are 3-year terms, so I think you'll see one name on the ballot for each of those. I don't know if there's a write-in, that's the campaign that's happening, I have not heard that, but you, what? There. Okay, so we have a current board member who is not on the ballot. Okay, so that's if Devin Lumbra, my brain just went blank for a minute. Devin Lumbra has been on the board for a few years, so she's going to have to work to try to get that word out, but it sounds like she wants to remain on the board but didn't get the petition in on time. I wasn't aware of that part. So the last article that you see on, not the last, the 5th article that you see on the budget vote is about what's the money we're asking for in terms of the overall budget for the Enosburg-Richford district. So that number is $25,204,787. So on the ballot, you'll also see that language down at the bottom that says if this budget is approved, that will result in per pupil education spending of $11,139, which is 8.6% higher than the per pupil spending from the current year, from FY25. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to give you more detail about what those drivers were in the budget. And then I just want to acknowledge that the way we fund public education in Vermont, the formula is very complicated and it's hard to understand. It's even harder to describe. So I'm going to do my best to do that piece with you. So I'm going to talk about, we had significant increases that I'm going to go over related to salary, health insurance, other benefits like long-term disability, life insurance, and dental insurance. And we also, this year, so when I talked about enrollment, that's one way that the state measures students. There's another way too that you'll see in the formula in the annual report. There are letters, long-term weighted ADM, LTW ADM. So what that means is for every child in our schools, there are weights that are associated to those kids to determine how expensive it should be to educate that child. So the theory behind that is some students cost more to educate. So a student who lives in poverty gets an additional weight. So that student would count for more than 1.0. There's an additional factor that goes into that for poverty. There are also additional factors, additional weights that get added for students who have disabilities, students who are emerging multilingual learners, for high school students, and so on. There are several different weights that get applied. For us in FNESU, poverty is the weight that we benefit most from because we serve a population that has a lot of students who live in poverty. So this last year, so let me just do a side-by-side for you. Last year, there was one way that the state measured the long-term weighted average daily membership related to poverty. Something changed in the qualification for poverty. When COVID happened, the state lowered the threshold for at what level would you qualify for additional services like Dr. Dinosaur and maybe food stamps and other state aid. This past year, they made that harder. They took how do I want to say this? They went back to the old way. So it's a little harder to qualify for that now. So that impacted us pretty significantly. So we lost almost 80 students in this calculation. So the student part is the divisor, right? So if you look at the total number divided by the number of students that you're educating, which gets you that per pupil, that loss of the 80 students contributed to that 8.6%. It made it higher than what the actual increase was in our spending. I hope that makes sense. I hope I did okay describing that part. If I didn't, you can let us know or let me know. When the board builds their budget and the principals build their budget, they're really looking at what are the goals that the system is working towards. I'll say you've probably seen these in places before. We're working really hard to make sure that all of our students are reading on grade level by the time they leave third grade. And we think about early literacy as being the foundation for all other learning. So we're putting a lot of time, energy, and resources into early literacy in the supervisory union. We're also working on helping students to build skills in social emotional learning. And I think that social emotional learning is one of those terms that I think is a little bit misunderstood. So we put the skills in here so that you could see it. This is similar to Leader in Me. Some of the skills that they're working on in Leader in Me are very closely tied. So when we say that we're working on social emotional learning, we're talking about self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, having empathy, relationships, skills, collaboration, responsible decision-making, and purpose. And so we're trying to help support students to develop those skills. Those are skills that we know will help them be successful students and humans over time. We also have a goal around student-centered learning, and that's about a shift in our graduation requirements, and that's centered on all students in the class of 2028 and beyond will use a body of evidence from both courses and or other flexible pathways options to demonstrate that they're proficient in what we call our portrait of a learner skills and indicators. So that's a shift in work that we've done. And that work was really centered on what is it, like we're living in a world that's really different than it was. I won't put myself in the same age category as all of you in this room, but it's different from when I was growing up. We were getting prepared to go off into the workforce, which was much more of a knowledge-based workforce. There were a lot of manufacturing jobs and other things that you really had to have. They were really looking for more of the academic skills for those jobs. We're now living in a world that is really technology-driven, and the skills that the students need to be successful to go off in the workforce are different. We need our students to leave us with skills that artificial intelligence can't replicate. We want them to be really successful as they go off into the world. of work and life, and some of those things are about being responsible, 5? Okay. Responsible decision makers. I'm going to just skip down. Information savvy, creative thinkers, contributors, emotionally intelligent, trustworthy, independent decision makers, and financially literate. So those are all of the things that we're working towards in addition to the content in their classes. So that's the board, connections to the board goals. Some additional considerations that I just want to lay out for you. When we were building this budget, there were some big things that we had to contend with. So last year, we were in negotiations with our support staff, and that collective bargaining agreement didn't get settled before we finalized last year's budget. So we had to build that into this year's budget. And we're also in negotiations with our support staff again and our teachers right now. I will say that our teachers are not highly paid compared to some of the others in surrounding areas, and we've been working really hard over time to try to increase their salaries and do that so that we can have a more competitive wage, because we love our teachers, we want our teachers to be here, and we want to be able to attract other teachers to want to come to FNESU, so we've been working on that. So we had to add in for the support staff agreement for last year, and we had to make a projection for where might we settle with support staff and teachers for next year. So we built in $872,137 for salaries into this budget. There's a lot going on both at the state level, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but also at the federal level. There's a lot of uncertainty around federal funding that we typically get. So some teachers in our buildings are paid for through what we call consolidated federal grants. So we're anticipating we will not get the full amount of federal grant funding that we typically do. So we've tried to be proactive about that, because we really rely on those grants to be able to staff our schools. So when our interventionists were talking today, a lot of the interventionists across the supervisory union are funded through that grant. So we tried to make some moves with this budget where we moved some people from grants into the local budgets, because when we think about the totality of what we get for grants this year, we knew if we made some level of move, that would give us a little bit of breathing room. Plus, we know through attrition, one of our people is retiring. So we don't think they'll wipe out the federal grants, but we think there'll be a reduction in what our theory of action is. If we take some of those out, hopefully we've built enough of a buffer to be able to maintain the other staffing levels. So that's why you're seeing an increase in some positions moving out of grants. Other things that really impacted us, health insurance premiums went up. I think it was 12.6% this year. That cost us alone on this side of the district almost $200,000. Other health premium benefits, other benefits that employees get, another $104,000, and that is life insurance, long-term disability, and dental insurance. And there was an impact. This is not a negative, this is a positive, but there was an increase in the number of high school tuition students on this side. So that was something that played into this as well. So on this next chart is, if we think about the total amount of money, the difference between what we asked for last year and what we're asking for this year, that whole circle represents the total amount of money. So you can see by looking at that pie, 55% was related to the salaries, 17% was related to those staffing shifts from grants. Health insurance was almost 13%. Those other employee benefits were almost 7%. And then there were some other increases that fall into that, about 8% of that overall increase. There were staffing changes that resulted from last year's budget to this year's budget. Last year's budget was tough. That was a really tough budget. season, we had to go 3 times to try to get a budget approved on the Enosburg-Richford side, and it resulted in us having to pull some portions of positions out of the budget. So there are some moves that got made in this budget that I'll just talk about resulting overall. We have 1.8 educators that we've moved in from consolidated grants overall. This budget reflects minus 0.17, so it's about a day less of a teacher, but it gives you all the little pieces on here of what that reflects. And some of these are, again, right sizing from shifts from last year. So I guess maybe I will go over this part. So work-based learning, we've reduced a quarter-time teacher at both high schools. There's still going to be work-based learning, but those duties have been assigned to some of the counselors who have that certification, so there won't be a separate person doing that. We had reduced Spanish at Enosburg High School in the 3rd round of the budget last year. We added that 1/3 of the Spanish teacher back in there. And we made a move around school counseling because we weren't able to hire at Richford Elementary this last year, so we moved a half out of Richford Elementary's budget, and we added a half, we added a half with Cold Hollow. So we moved, so there are some teachers that are over here helping to support this year. We made a budget shift last year that we're trying to correct in this budget, and it's no impact on the money, it's just which of the school budgets it's coming out of. And then plus 1 paraeducator here at RES, minus 1 at Enosburg Elementary. So full disclosure, this is where I get a little like, talking about these details with all of you without Morgan. I'm going to do my best. So when we look at the budget we have some columns there. We have the budget from 2 years ago, FY24. We have last year's budget, FY25. And we have FY26's proposed budget. So the difference from 25 to 26 is about $1.5 million, and that's that pie chart that we just talked through. So in order to figure out what your tax rate is going to be, this is the first part of that formula, that calculation. So you start with that $1.5 million, and then you subtract out local and grant revenues. You also look at we have some prior year fund balance that we're applying to this to buy down the tax rate. So you have about $438,000 that the board has decided to put against tax rate here, so you can also subtract that. And what that comes to is it equals our overall education spending, which is, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. I was reading this column. It's this column. So the board chose to put $645,000 in to buy down the tax rate. And that brings your education spending down to $18,300,000. Then you have to divide that by the long-term weighted ADM, and that's that calculation for students. And again, remember, we're almost 80 students fewer than we were last year. So that gets us to that per pupil education spending of $11,139. Unless you need me to, I'm not going to describe the dollar yield, but the dollar yield is a factor set by the legislature that then gets applied in this formula. And that dollar yield has also dropped. When the dollar yield drops, the tax rates go up, okay? So that leads to the equalized homestead tax rate. So there's also, the legislators last year made a change to how they calculate the equalized homestead tax rate. They're applying a district common level of appraisal before you get to that. So that looks like our district tax rate went up by 27 cents. It is a change in where they calculated things in that formula last year. This is the better slide. This next slide, this gets to what we're anticipating, how that's going to apply. So we have Enosburg, we have Richford. The district tax rate is always going to be the same, but then you have to look at the common level of appraisal, which has to do with your property values and what they're assessed at and how they're selling versus the market right? Like your property value versus what it should sell for in the market. So after we apply all of that, we apply Enosburg CLA, we're expecting that the property tax rates with this budget should go up around 4 cents. In the Richford, your homestead tax rate is pretty flat, so yours would go up 0.0066 cents. So you should see virtually no change from last year if the yield stays the same, which doesn't get finalized until the end of the legislative session. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Phew, I was worried about those. Okay, so this just shows you kind of a historical perspective of the equalized homestead tax rates in our communities. So that red line for you all, can I assume that everybody in here is from Richford? Do you have any Enosburg residents here? Okay, so let's focus on the red line. Your tax rate fell significantly when you had your community-wide tax reappraisal. I know your taxes didn't feel like they dropped because your property values then were worth a lot more. So I know you felt that. Your tax rate has increased. As I said, it's an incremental increase from last year. Compared to Enosburg, it is significantly less. And again, that has to do with the differences in what property values are between the two communities. This next part, I will say this is about all of these lines on this left side of the chart represent all of the school districts in the state of Vermont. Each line is a district. We are way down here at the bottom. This is this year that we're in. This is really pulling out that bottom part of this graph, so I'll talk from here. That bottom blue line is the Enosburg-Richford district, and that shows that we spend $10,253 per equalized pupil this year. That is the 6th lowest in the state of Vermont. 4 of the districts that are below us don't operate schools. One district that's below us does operate a school. It's a very large school district, so there are some economies of scale that they have that we don't. The next blue line is our other district, Northern Mountain Valley. So they're like 11, or I think they're right around 11th lowest in the state of Vermont. When you look at the big part on the left side, the red lines that you see are where the other Franklin County districts lie in their spending, and there are 2 black lines. That first black line represents the Franklin County average, and if you look at where the other red lines lie, the only reason that Franklin County average is there is because we're so low. We're drawing that average way down. The next black line above that is the statewide average, so that's about the average that the districts across the Vermont are spending per pupil. So given that, one of the things that I want you to know is that we hustle for extra resources for our kids. And we have been seeking for years competitive grants, and we've been pretty successful in getting those competitive grants. So this is also in your book. I pulled out some for this slideshow that were specific to Richford and Enosburg. So some of the things that we've been able to get is a $310,000 grant to deal with the heating problem that we've had at Richford High School. So we have new pellet boilers now that were mostly funded through that grant money. We also were able to do LED light projects, and they're in all of the rooms here in this building and in all but one of the buildings across our supervisory union. We had $111,000 to do that. We have for our after-school program, which a lot of families and students utilize, we have recently received $578,000 to continue that project. And right before we went to print on this, we got two more grants. One of them was connected to the Enosburg-Richford side, and that is another $232,000 for after-school and summer programming. So these are some of the things that we do out of my office to try to bring in additional resources for our students to be able to have these opportunities and to be able to address some of the facilities needs that we have. The final thing that you'll see on town meeting day is the board is asking for authority to take, remember I said they were setting aside about $600,000 to buy down your tax rate. They have an additional $215,000 that they would like to put towards capital improvement. And that goes to things like that project for the boilers at Richford High School. We would use something like that to take care of a facility project. That's what the capital reserve is all about. There are some kind of frequently asked questions. I'll go a little quickly through this part, and you can stop me if you want me to spend more time on it, and I may have covered it. I'm going to go quickly over how our tax rate's set. We talked a little bit about that. In Vermont, our system allows towns and communities to decide how much they're going to spend on education. Voters approve the budget, and then the state gathers all that data. And they say, okay, $2.4 billion is what was approved. I don't know that that number is exactly right from last year, but it's in that ballpark throughout the state. And then they figure out that dollar yield, and then they know that's the amount of money that they need to collect in taxes in order to fund all of those schools. So everybody makes their own decision, and they get to spend whatever their community will approve. That is challenging because you end up with that discrepancy where you have schools like ours that are spending $10,000 and other schools that are spending $18,000. So not the same opportunities is what I would say.
Can I make a comment there?
Yeah.
This is my second year at Richford Elementary, and
I'm sorry, could you go to the mic when you
Sure, yeah, sorry. All right, so, like right here?
To the microphone.
All the way up to go over this way?
Yeah.
Okay, geez. Hey, so I'm second year in to Richford Elementary School, and where I worked before was the Upper Valley, and we had $16,000 a year per pupil costs. And I would suggest that the education I see here that these students are getting for the cost that it's currently is better than what they were getting. So like when I think about like those rates, like they would send tuition for high school was like $19,000 a year. So they're throwing a lot of money, and what all of the grants that you do and all of the work that happens here is providing a better education, personally in my view. So I just wanted to mention, like, that's amazing.
People good with how tax rates are set? So do you understand why they're different between the two communities, how we end up with the difference between Enosburg and Richford, the property value part? Okay. So I'm going to skip both of those. So one thing to note is that the governor has proposed $77 million in his budget proposal to buy down tax rates across the state of Vermont. And I'm going to talk about why in just a second, but that still has a long ways to go. It has to get all the way through the legislative session and be approved by the legislators and signed into law. But right now in the budget, there is an anticipation that that excess revenue money that he had set aside will make your property taxes that I've just described to you lower. Okay? So we'll go to the next slide. I'm wondering if people in this room have heard anything on the news about the governor's plan to reform public education in Vermont. Okay, so right now on the left-hand side, there's a visual of the state of Vermont, and you see all those little shapes in there. That represents our existing supervisory union and supervisory district structures. So there are currently 52 other systems like ours, right? So we're in a box together, Enosburg, Richford, Bakersfield, Berkshire, Montgomery, Sheldon, under the Franklin Northeast umbrella. Currently there are, I think I need better glasses, 119 districts within those 52 supervisory unions or districts, and there are 287 schools. We currently are publicly funding 83,733 students. So within the governor's proposal, he is suggesting that we go from that model to having a 5-district model for the state of Vermont. So the way that this was decided upon is that's actually modeled after the Vermont Superintendents Association regional group boundaries. And I'm a member of the Champlain Valley Superintendents Association. That dark green shape right there, that represents all of Franklin, Grand Isle, Chittenden, and 2/3 of Addison. Those are my 17 colleagues that I meet with every month, and those boundaries were created solely for that purpose, to define where I go as a superintendent for my regional superintendent meetings. And it also is how we define, we have an executive board for the Superintendents Association, and each of those 5 regions gets a trustee, okay? So that's the only reason that that was ever created, was around what to do with getting superintendents working together in regional groups. So that was pulled as the plan for how we would redistrict the state of Vermont. So we're in that dark green, which would put us in the largest district, which would serve around 35,000 students. The other 4 districts would serve between 10 and 15,000 students. So this would result in five superintendents, 5 central offices instead of the 52 that we currently have now. So this model is, right now, it is lacking details. We don't know a lot yet because there's not a bill associated with this model yet. They're releasing information about the parts of the model to the legislators currently, and you can see those things happen if you follow the legislative committees. The committees that are mostly involved right now are Senate Ed, House Ways and Means, and Senate Finance. So a lot of information is being released there, and you can watch those hearings online. So with the governor's proposal, there's a timeline associated with it. And the timeline really starts now. He's presented this plan. Right now, the legislators are contemplating, are they going to move forward with his plan? Once they get a bill, they're just talking about it now. Will they make changes to his plan, or will they move his plan through the way it currently is? Generally, when a bill is introduced, there are changes that occur throughout the legislative process. So I'm going to go out on a limb and tell you I think it's unlikely we're going to land with 5 districts, but I do think that there is going to be significant reform, and we're going to end up with a very different delivery model than we currently have. So let's pretend for a moment that the plan gets approved as is. I just told you about that $77 million, so the governor, what's my time? Okay, I'm almost done. The governor is going to try to buy down those taxes the next school year, and then they're going to start transitioning towards those new districts. And then they're going to write rules around school sizes, what accountability measures they'll use, budget guidelines, and sustainability. They're also, in the next year, 26-27, elect a school district board for those regions. So the boards would get to work in that November. They'd build their first budget. They would, that June of 2027, we'd be closing out everything that had to do with our district, Franklin Northeast, and everything would be transferred on July 1st to the new district. They would then take over full operation of all the schools within the new district. There's a new funding formula I didn't really talk about, and there's a lot of work that has to happen there. That would also go into place that July 1. And then there would be school advisory councils that would be created to provide some feedback to the larger district about what are some things that are important to your schools, and they'd be responsible for approving Kelly's school improvement plan. In 2028-29, in the governor's plan, words that they use are rescale the school portfolio. I'm going to decode that for you. It means they're going to create the conditions to reduce the number of schools that we have in the state, whether they make that decision as part of this plan or they create the conditions so that we can't actually meet their expectations around efficiency, the financial and the academic standards that they will set. And then there are rules that they'll come up with around operations that the new district will have to follow. So I just shared a lot of information with you. Does anyone have any questions about any part of that? Did I overwhelm you? Yes. Thank you for being honest. Okay. I'm willing to stick around if anybody thinks of any questions, you just want to talk about it. Again, I thank you all for coming. I know it's not your favorite thing to come and talk about, but I appreciate it. We have more budget presentations coming up in the next 2 weeks, almost every night in the next 2 weeks, so you can find one in our towns. All of the dates are on the back of that budget book, and you also can email us if questions come up. Please share information with your friends and neighbors and encourage them to come to some of the future informational sessions. Thank you, everybody.